Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we're going to take a look at this 11-game Major League Baseball slate. Now, this slate does start at 1 p.m., and it runs all the games till 4:10 p.m. Eastern, so do keep that in mind. So we do have quite a few games on this one. Before I get started, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really does help the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. So, this slate does feature some interesting games. We also have a couple weather concerns in the Detroit game and the New York Mets game. So the Detroit game is definitely more questionable. The Chicago White Sox game also has a lot of winds, so that could have a boost to the bats. So do keep that in mind. But overall, it's a pretty deep, big slate, so we do have a lot of options here. As for the games themselves, the Atlanta Houston game and the Arizona Chicago Cubs game and the Dodgers Nationals game all have the highest totals, whereas the Texas Detroit game has one of the lowest totals on the slate. So that is kind of where we are at. Everybody else is in the 8 to 8.5 range in total runs. Um, but we do have a lot of pitching today that is capable. It's kind of a weird pitching day because there's really a lot of good pitchers, but there's not really a bunch that really jump off the page. And the top pitchers are against good teams, and so that is definitely going to make the slate a little bit crazy from that perspective. So let's go ahead and get into it though. And I do have one play that I think is a good core play, and that's Freddie Peralta. Peralta. Uh, Feels like he's probably the best option when it comes to the more expensive plays, as he's got the best strikeout rate on the slate. Now, San Diego does hit some home runs, but I do think that he's a capable option today, and he's been really good to start the season. He's one of the few pitchers that have 30 fantasy point upside, and so I think he is a great option on the slate. Other guys that you could work with would be a Scuball here. Now, Scuball is facing Texas, which is always a tough matchup for any pitcher. He started the season very solid, though. The strikeout rate has been pretty good, but he has had some earned runs given up in the one game against Oakland. And he's faced a relatively easy schedule from this perspective. So now that he's going to face a tough situation, I am a little bit off on that. So this is a contrarian play right now, but he definitely does have some potential as he's one of the better strikeout potential options on the slate. Now, for Kansas City, it seems like there's some confusion whether it's going to be Singer today or is it going to be Michael Waka, whichever one it is. Now Waka is a little bit less expensive. Whichever one it is, I think has a lot of upside in this matchup. Uh, they're very close to being core plays for me. But they both have a lot of upside and have decent strikeout rates and Chicago White Sox obviously one of the crappier teams. So whichever starter here for Kansas City it is probably going to be a good second option as their price is a little bit cheaper, but than the top overall guys. Excuse me, my nose is bothering me. Anyway, let's move on to the next guys. So this Yankee Toronto game, Stroman and Gosman are both GPP plays. That both these guys could give up a lot of earned runs today, and while they do have decent strikeout stuff, they're not the best on the slate, and they're not. There's two guys that are a little bit better, and that's going to be Miller and Lopez. Now I do think all four of these guys are good GPP plays, but if I had to rank them, I would put Lopez first, Miller second, then Gosman, then Stroman, and that's mostly to do with the strikeout potentials. Lopez looks really solid though, even though he's got a tough matchup here against Baltimore. He's been pretty good in the first game of the season. He had two rough games. If the K rate's there, he'll have a lot of upside. But Baltimore can definitely score runs. So all four of these guys are they're GPP plays, but they're risky. And when we get below that price range, we'll look at Abbott and Max Fried and Blackburn. Now these three guys all face interesting situations. I think Abbott looks a lot better than maybe that the data suggests. Uh, uh, you know, Especially because he's considering he's facing Seattle. He strikes out a lot, and he does have some decent strikeout rate at times. So I think he's somebody that I would definitely look at as a decent option. Though he has been less than ideal so far this season, strikeout wise. Um, Fareed does have a tough matchup against Houston, but this series has been all sorts of wonky. And while he started the season with two really rough games, the last game he did pretty well. I don't know that he's going to go super deep in this one, though, regardless of how good he pitches, so that is the concern. Blackburn, he has some good upside in this matchup, but St. Louis can hit some bats, but he's been solid to start the year. The question here is uh, if he can get enough strikeouts to pay off here, and if his team can actually get him the win. That tends to be a difficult thing for Oakland. Then we have three other guys in Severino, Dunning, and King. These are all very contrarian options, but they're in interesting spots as I think that they all have some utility. But I like of these three, I would like Severino the most, but all three of them have some are pretty rough here. And then if you want a Hail Mary play, you could look at Landon Knack. Now he hadn't started yet this season, but in the AAA he had a 3.22 ERA with a 54.22 strikeout to walk ratio in 13 games, 58 total innings, 54 strikeouts. So I think he's capable of a decent game here, especially against Washington. But he's definitely a Hail Mary play on the slate. Looking at our bats now, we do have some bats that we do like a lot. First, looking at catchers, Ryan Jeffers, assuming he draws the start today, he jumps off the uh, which it looks like he is starting actually. He jumps off the page at this position. He's dirt cheap too, so that definitely helps us pay up at other positions. And I do like Minnesota today in this one, even though they do have a lot of strikeout potential. I think that they face a Zimmerman from Baltimore, and he really doesn't have much upside. Adley Rutschman is a good alternative here at catcher, though, as he also faces a good situation. The metrics here for him are pretty solid, though. He's only had one home run to start the season. I think he has home run potential again today. And then, of course, two contrarian plays, one being Wilson Contreras for St. Louis, as he's been really solid to start the year, and also Freddie Furman. Uh, for Kansas City. If he draws a start, he'll be somebody that's a dirt cheap option that you can kind of use as a Hail Mary play on the slate. He looks really decent though. But don't overthink Jeffers. I think he's a really solid play on the slate, and he has a lot of potential. Lay at our first baseman. The top two, this position is pretty top heavy with Otani, Matt Olson, and Freddie Freeman all having absolutely fantastic metrics for this game. So you could run any of those dudes. But if you want to save some money here, Benny Pasquantino is the best option as he's got good metrics for this game and he's been on fire lately. I look for him to have a really solid game here as well. Looking at second baseman, I really do like Mookie Betts here at second base, or at shortstop for that matter. But Ketel Marte also has a lot of upside here. He hit a home run yesterday, and I think he has some potential to do that again. This Chicago Cubs Arizona game is definitely going to be a very interesting game again, and so I think he's viable. However, you could also go with Nico Horner as a value play. Now he didn't do great so far this season. He's done okay, but he had a triple yesterday in their game, and he scored 25 fantasy points. I think that's actually wrong, but okay. Regardless, no, sorry, it isn't wrong. Horner looks like a great play on the slate, and while he doesn't have that home run upside, he's got that good hitting upside on the slate, so he's definitely worth a look. I was thinking of Chris Morel. And then Gleyber Torres is another contrarian option off of them as well. But I do think I'm going to try to fit one of either the Cubs or Arizona guys here at second base. Looking at third base, Austin Riley does jump off the page today as a great option at third. However, he is very expensive, and it's going to be hard to stack the Braves in this one. So I am going to look more for value, and there's quite a lot of good value here. So we could obviously go to Chris Morel, who looked really solid yesterday, but didn't really get much out of it. But he still draws really good metrics again here, and this game should be pretty interesting. But we do have some good value plays on this one. One being Kyle Farmer. Uh, for Minnesota as he draws really good metrics here. Now, he has not done much to start the season, but in the games that he has managed to score some fantasy points, he's been really solid with the price point being dirt cheap. He has upside. And then Jose Miranda, also very interesting for Minnesota. I think he does draw some good metrics for this game and has a lot of upside. Miguel Garcia also in play for this third base as well, though as a contrarian play for Kansas City. Sorry. Looking at shortstop, Bobby Witt and Mookie Betts definitely jump off as his top overall options. However, I don't think you need to pay up for them today because we have a lot of good value plays here. One being Gunnar Henderson, who's been absolutely fantastic so far this season, and he's had 3 straight really good games. He seems to like facing Minnesota, and I think this game is going to be a high scoring game here in Baltimore. So I think this is going to be somebody that you want to take a look at. But you could also go down a little bit cheaper and go to CJ Abrams for Washington, as he does have a favorable matchup here, and he's been one of the few guys on the Washington Nationals that's been solid to start the season. I do like his upside here. He has a good potential. But Kyle Farmer can also fit in here at shortstop if you don't want to use him at third, and you wanted to pay down for Jose Miranda or something there as well. So you could, fit in a couple of Minnesota guys there. Moving to outfielders, Acuna Jr., Otani, and Aaron Judge all jump off the page as great plays on the slate. Obviously, they're all super expensive and going to be hard to roster all of them, but yeah, if you can fit one of them in, then that's definitely the way to go. I'm going to rank them Otani, Acuna, and then Judge in that order. Then when we get down to the $4,500, 4,000 to 5,000 range, excuse me, we're going to look at Byron Buxton as a great play here. Where'd he go? He starts off with really good metrics in this game. He's really struggled to start the season, but he does have that upside today, and I do think he's a viable play here. I also like Ian Happ, who had a home run yesterday. He had a grand slam yesterday. That was his first home run of the season. If this game is what I think it's going to be, then he's likely going to have a really solid day again. Cody Bellinger also in play for Chicago, as he has been pretty iffy so far, but he does draw good home run metrics for this game. Michael Harris, also interesting if you can fit a Brave stack, then Michael Harris is definitely somebody I'm going to try to stack in there with him. However, he hasn't been particularly great. Though he's getting a couple of hits. He hasn't had stolen bases like I expected so far, at least. But hopefully, he can get on track. For some value plays here, Blanco for Kansas City looks really interesting if he draws a start, though he has not done much to start the season, other than getting walked a few times. And surprisingly, no hits despite the situation. So, in 9 games, he has, sorry, in 11 games, he has actually managed no hits, but he has gotten walked a few times and gotten 5 stolen bases and scored 5 runs. So, uh, fantasy potential is there. Very interesting the way he's played to start the year. MJ Melendez also interesting for Kansas City. He's been pretty solid when I've utilized him at times, and so he's definitely in that situation today. And then Margot Margot's actually out, so it looks like we won't have to talk about him at all. So with that said, that's where I got the outfielders. The sub 3K guys: Blanco, Farmer, Miranda, Parker Meadows in outfield, Colt Keith at second base, Michael Massey at second base, Freddie Perman at catcher, Gentry at outfield, Austin Martin at outfield, and then Harrison Bader at outfield. So we have a lot of good value plays and kind of ways to stack you up. Uh, Anyhow, this slate should be pretty fun. Should be high scoring again, like it